Hi everyone, and welcome to this recording for AEM as a cloud service. Today we're going to be picking up from where we left off after the last one, where we took an AEM project that was built for AEM 6.5. In this case, the oldest version of the weekend project, so that's version 0.0.2. And we used the AEM repository migration tool to get it into a structure that is compatible with AEM as a cloud service. Today, we're going to take that converted project and run it through Cloud Manager to actually get it up and running in AEM as a cloud service. So what you're looking at here is the actual structure of the AEM 6.5 project. So this is what is available on GitHub, and like I said, it's version 0.0.2. After the migration, what we ended up with was this target folder that had a project source and then a fresh set of Maven subprojects that together encompass the structure that AEM as a cloud service needs. And this was all generated by running the migration, the repository migration tool using this YAML configuration file. So now that we have this fresh project, it's going to take 6 steps to get it into AEM as a cloud service. So we're first going to create a new repository in Cloud Manager. We're going to copy the migrated project into its own local folder. We're going to initialize the new local folder as a Git repo and push it to the Cloud Manager repository. We're then going to use that new repository in a pipeline. We're going to run the pipeline, and if there are errors, we're going to fix them. So the first step to create a new repository in Cloud Manager, that's obviously important because this code that we just migrated needs to live somewhere. And it has to live in a repository that lives in Cloud Manager. It can't just live in any regular GitHub project or any type of other Git. It has to live in Cloud Manager because that's the only place that the pipelines that can install projects into AEM as a cloud service, they only have access to repositories that live in Cloud Manager. So we have to get it there. So that's going to be the first step. I'm going to open up my Cloud Manager, move into my sandbox. In here, I've got some existing repositories, and I'm going to create a fresh one called Weekend Migration. So that's going to take about 5 minutes to build, so I'm going to pause this recording and catch up when it's done. Okay, so my fresh repository is now built. We have Weekend Migration over here. Now let's take this folder that contains all of our AEM as a cloud service Maven subprojects and move it to a fresh location outside of this existing 6.5 project, and then initialize it as a Git repository and move it into that new Cloud Manager repository. So here I am in, here's my folder. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to move up a couple levels. And here I am in my migrations folder. I'm going to remove the old Weekend Migrated one that we don't need anymore. Create a new one of the same name. And in here, I'm going to move the project that was created by the migration. So this one here that lives under my target folder, I'm going to move it into that newly created Weekend Migration project folder. So here I have it, and you can see that it's living under Weekend Migration, and in here I have just the Maven subprojects that were generated during the repository migration. I'm going to initialize this as a fresh Git repository. So I'm going to run git init. And I'm going to run a git commit. Initial push with AEMaaCS project. Probably need to git add first. Okay, so they've been added. Let's run the commit again. Okay, there we go. And now it's time to actually push them into the repository that we just created. So here is the information for that repository. It's accessed by clicking Access Repository Info here from Cloud Manager. Just make sure that you have the proper repository selected from this dropdown, so weekend migration in our case. So here's the URL that we want to work with. Well, the URL of the repository, and then AEM as a cloud service actually does a pretty good job of giving you access to some sample Git commands that you'll need to work with it. So here is the command to add this repository as a remote on an existing one. So I'm just going to copy this one here and paste it into my my terminal. And now that we have that Git repository, the Cloud Manager one added, I can just run a git push Adobe master. So I'm using Adobe as the origin name because that's what I added it here. So this will push all the files into my repository. And once this is done, the next step will be to configure a pipeline to actually use this repository. So I can do that while this is getting pushed. So back in Cloud Manager, I can go into my pipelines. I'm working with a dev environment in this case, so that means that I'm going to be running a non-production pipeline. And AEM Cloud Manager comes with a non-production pipeline created for you already. So all we have to do is modify it. So I'm going to click on the edit button here. You're going to see that when we modify pipelines, it's always important to make sure that we have the right type selected. So if we're working with non-production, there's two possibilities. One of them is code quality, which means it's just going to run the tests that are normally run before code can be pushed to stage or production. So this is that you might want to have these just to make sure that as you're creating new features or merging new branches into your master branch, that your code still is up to par, right? So you can have this kind of a pipeline and you can have a running report as to how good your code is and if it's good enough to enter into production. In our case, we actually do want to build it, so we're going to select the deployment pipeline. Moving into the source code tab here, this is where we want to select the repository that we just created. So I'm going to move this and select weekend migration. And it says no branches detected, probably because my push is still going. So that branch does not yet exist. Okay, so here we know, we can see that I just completed, so that's great timing. Let's try this again. Okay. So now the master branch is available for us for use in this pipeline. I'm going to click on update, and I'm now going to run the pipeline. So this is the first 5 steps of getting our converted repository into AEM as a cloud service, and then we'll see if we have errors or not. So I can monitor the progress of this pipeline. And this is going to take a few minutes, so I'm going to stop the recording again and come back when it's done. Okay, so coming back to our pipeline here in Cloud Manager, as you can see, the build did fail. Obviously, it wasn't going to be just that easy. So let's download the build log and see what happened. So I'm going to save this. Oops. Replace. And let's open this log. So you can see that what it's reporting is that all of the individual modules actually did build successfully, which is what we expected because they did work locally when we ran it before Cloud Manager. So there obviously aren't any problems with the Maven build itself, but at the very end it says build did not produce any non-skipped content package artifacts. At least one non-skipped content package is required for AEM as a cloud service builds. So what we need to do is make sure that there's at least one package that doesn't get skipped. And what that package in our case here is going to be the all package, because that's the one that encompasses all the other ones. So if we go back into our project here, if we look at the all package, you'll notice that in the POM file, you'll notice that there actually isn't any Cloud Manager target entries, and that's good because we do want this one to be deployed. And usually what you'll see in these POM files is that there's a Cloud Manager target set to none, and that will in fact make this package get skipped. So we don't see an entry like that, so in all likelihood this one is not getting skipped, which is good. What you'll see though is if you go to the root POM, the parent POM, and do a search for that, you will see a Cloud Manager target set to none. And this is good to have in every single package except for the all package. Because we see it here in the parent POM applied to the file vault package Maven plugin, this is actually going to propagate and apply to every single package, including the all package. So what we have to do is we have to remove this. Okay, so we're going to remove this from our parent POM, and we're going to do another push. Okay, so I just ran a git status, and you can see that there's a whole lot of files that are modified. We only expect a single file to be modified because we only modified the parent POM. But we see a lot of them, and the reason we see so many is because what Git is actually picking up is it's picking up the target folders from each Maven module. And the reason it's doing that is because we forgot to put a git ignore file in our project. So target folders, they get generated at compile time. And since they get generated at compile time, we don't actually want to include them in the Git repository because they'll get generated on their own during the Maven build. So we need to have a git ignore file to tell Git to ignore these files and not include them in our pushes. So I'm just going to pull the git ignore file from the project that we migrated earlier and create it in here. All right, so I just copied and pasted everything in there. We now have a git ignore file. Problem is though that all these files, they already got pushed during our first commit. And so the fact that they're now included in a git ignore file doesn't actually remove them. So there's actually a git command that we can run to remove all these files that should be ignored that previously were not. So I did a search on Google and found this guy right here. We'll put this command in the comment section, so you'll be able to pull it. So we'll do we'll run that. You can see that it removes all of the target folders, and that if we run a git status, then what we see is that we've modified only the pom.xml file, which is what we expect, and that we have this git ignore file that is newly created, obviously. So I'm first going to run git commit and commit the pom file and say removed. What was that called? The target entry. And then I'm going to add the git ignore file. Oops. And lastly, I'm going to commit the deletion of all these target folders. So I'm just going to run this command here, and we should be good to go. So we removed all the target folders. We committed the change to our parent POM that's going to allow us to actually build the all package, and we added the git ignore file. So I'm going to go back into my Cloud Manager and go into here's my pipeline that failed. Open this up, the pipelines view, and run this one more time. Okay, so I can monitor the progress as it goes, and I'm going to stop this recording and come back when it completes. Okay, so coming back to my pipeline here, which is now complete, you can see that we've successfully built the AEM project that we migrated from 6.5 to AEM as a cloud service, and it is now in our environments. So we can now go into our author that we can access here. It still says pipeline is running, but that should clear up after a refresh. And so this can actually happen with your environments, is they can go into hibernation mode, and that happens if they're not used in a long time. So before we can actually access the author environment, we're going to have to de-hibernate it. So we can do this from the Cloud Manager just by clicking de-hibernate. So this too is going to take a few minutes. So I'll let this run and come back when it's running, and we can see our built project running in our author environment. Okay, so my dev environment is up and running once again, so I can access it from Cloud Manager. I'm going to go ahead and sign with my Adobe ID credentials. So that's one of the great things about Cloud Manager is it's got that SSO integration between the AEM instances and the rest of Adobe's infrastructure. So from here, I can go into my sites. I see the weekend site project that was just built. And from here, I can go ahead and start my authoring tasks. And obviously, any development that I do from now on, I can push to the Git repository. I can build using that pipeline. So we're fully integrated with our CI/CD. And basically, we've successfully taken a 6.5 project, converted it to something compatible with AEM as a cloud service, and successfully ran it through a pipeline, and it is now running in AEM's cloud infrastructure. Thanks a lot.